of the leader, but we, instead of doing call and response, and even at the end of call and response, you might go ahead and repeat the name, eliding it or making it shorter a little bit towards the end. So you might hear people at a service say Namo Amida Butsu, and then start saying Naman Dabutsu, and then saying Nam Dabs, Naman Dabs, Naman Dabs, because it's easy to repeat. And the feeling then is that you take a deep breath and you just go ahead and continue to recite it faster and softer until you're out of breath. So that's why at the end people might seem to be whispering Naman Dabs, Naman Dabs, because it's the end of their breath. But it's a very nice gesture. Has nothing at all to do with the Dharma talk I'm going to give today, but just for your background and information. So typically the chairperson would greet everyone, and in that function I really am happy to see everyone here. We have a nice mix of temple members and folks who are visiting, so everyone is welcome. Everyone is, as may be indicated in the Dharma message later, together. There's no distinction between you who've just walked in and those of us who've continued to come Sunday after Sunday. Once we enter this room, we're simply in the presence of Buddha, Buddha's teachings, and Buddha's community, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So ordinarily at this time we would have a chant together, and I would tell you what page number, but the chant today is going to be in English. More often it's in a kind of Sino-Japanese, and the characters are spelled out in Roman form, Roman letter forms. So it's very easy to chant along, although you may or may not know what you're chanting about. But regardless of whether it's in English or Sino-Japanese, the whole point of these chants is A, yes, they do mean something, but B, it brings us closer together as a group. We're all saying the same words. We're breathing at the same time or similar times so that we can get enough air to continue. And it helps us calm down. It helps us regulate our feelings. Maybe you're here with a bunch of problems. Concentrating on the sutra, chanting the sutra, allows us to set some of those problems aside, or at least make them less burdensome. So today I'm going to be chanting something sometimes called the Metta Sutra, or in our case, in our service book, we call it the Loving Kindness Meditation. But today, if you'll allow me, I'm going to do it with you in call and response. And that's so that you are present with your ears and keeping up in that fashion. I think it will be a good experience for all of us, and especially for those who are new. In the service, they will ring the bell to indicate that a sutra is about to be chanted. We tend to do the Metta Sutra as a reading, so I won't do that at this time. But let's, in call and response, please listen carefully. I'm going to just read it first, and I'm going to ask you, once I start singing it, to go ahead and repeat each line. But this begins, "May all beings be happy and well. May no harm or difficulty come to them. May they live in peace and harmony." So a beautiful wish for all sentient beings, for all people. And it has a little bit of a tune to it, so let's try it one line at a time. May all beings be happy and well. Repeat. May no harm or difficulty come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. Now in the stanzas that follow, we turn to people specifically, starting with ourselves. May I be happy and well. May no harm or difficulty come to me. May I live in peace and harmony. May my family be happy and well. May no harm or difficulty come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my teachers be happy and well. May no harm or difficulty come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my friends be happy and well. May no harm or difficulty come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May strangers be happy and well. May no harm or difficulty come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my enemies be happy and well. May no harm or difficulty come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May all beings be happy and well. May no harm or difficulty come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. Thank you so much. Please put your hands together in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandab, Samandab, Samandab. Services also will have a silent meditation. I know that many people who are visiting anyway would associate Buddhism with meditation and may even think that we'd be doing a lot today. But our meditations in the service are relatively short, just a minute or two. But I encourage you to take advantage of them, not just sit there waiting for it to be over, but to go ahead and actually take charge of that time. You could go ahead and take a deep breath and then just relax. And let's all do that together. Take a deep breath and just relax. Physiologically, that buys us a little peace and calm. And then breathing deeply, slowly, also helps us with peace and calm. So during the silent meditation, which will start with the ringing of a bell, please go ahead and take advantage of this time for that goal. You may go ahead and sit comfortably. The Buddha path is right below your feet. Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Naman Vats, Namadavs, Namadavs. So thanks for that. We have the fan on today just to go ahead and make sure it remains somewhat cool. It's a comfortable day compared to some of the summer heat we've had recently. If we didn't have the fan going, you'd hear more of the street noise from our location. So I hope you didn't find the fan a distraction. In some ways, it kind of softened the distractions outside. But any time in meditation is not wasted. So I know we've moved on from that, but a little bit of that peace and calm may stay with you through the day. So I hope you enjoyed it. So also at the service, the chairperson will lead us in a recitation. Today I'm going to ask you to take the service book, the purple service book in front of you, and turn to page 90 for the golden chain. We'll be reading this all together. This was originally written for temple youth, for Dharma school children, but it is so much appreciated by every member of our Sangha that it's a frequent reading for us during the services. So please join me in the reading of the Golden Chain. I am a link in Amida's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. I will be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amida's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. So we're going to go ahead and we show our respect to the service book sometimes, and I should have reminded you at the beginning to lift it up. And then we often follow with Nembutsu. So Gasho, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandavs, Namadavs, Namadavs. So thanks for that. We've already conducted a lot of the ritual that takes place before a service. I hope you've gotten a few hints on why it's important to us in terms of making the transition from the outside world and all of the troubles, all of its troubles with peace and calm here. And the real goal is not just to be calm, but to go ahead and be prepared to hear the teachings of the Buddha. So today, the teachings we'll focus on will be the Fourfold Noble Path. The Four Noble Truths. And those are crucial to all sects of Buddhism. If you read any book of introduction to Buddhism, they will start with some of these basic teachings which come from the first address that the historical Buddha made at the Deer Park in Benares, often called the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. And almost every introduction to Buddhism you'll read, regardless of the school, regardless of the sect, will start here. So it's helpful for those folks who are visiting to learn a little bit more about Buddhism. It's helpful for those of us who have long come to the temple to be reminded about these basic teachings. At this time, could I go ahead and ask you to put your hands together in Gasho? Amida, who attained Buddhahood in the distant past, full of compassion for foolish beings of the 5 defilements, took the form of Shakyamuni Buddha and appeared in Gaya. Namo Amida Butsu. Namadabs. So it's very common for the Dharma message to begin with a reading like that, often taken from the writings of one of the founders of our sect, in this case the founder, the primary founder, Shinran Shonin. And I only included that reading in part because it identifies a question that may be in your minds. Well, this is a Buddhist temple, why do you keep talking about Amida Buddha? In our way of thinking, this is not a requirement on you at all, but in our way of thinking, Amida Buddha, a kind of cosmic Buddha beyond space and time, appeared in the form of Shakyamuni Buddha. So when we recite Amida Buddha's name, it's with that knowledge. In other words, we're honoring the Buddha, the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Gautama, the man who lived, born maybe some 2,600 years ago, and became the Buddha. Real person, historians agree. There is good documentation, if not at the moment, in the monuments that King Ashoka had erected sometime after the Buddha's death. And to this day, even though India is not a Buddhist country, Buddhists make a very small percentage now, the Buddha is still well respected. In fact, you may even go online and read about the Buddha and see the term Bhagavan Shakyamuni Buddha. Bhagavan is the same word that they use for God. And even in the United States, including the Black Mountain area, there is a Hindu temple there, and the historical Buddha is one of the figures along with the pantheon of Hindu gods. So very well respected still. I used to call on hotels working for a publisher, and very often the hotel owner was Indian American. And they knew more about Buddhism than I did. They'd learned it in school. The Buddha is considered, just like in Western education, we'd go ahead and be sure to read, at least in some form, the great Greek philosophers. Buddha takes that role for them. Considered a world-class philosopher, even if not at the center of the religious life of India. But today, I'm not here to tell you what to think about Buddhism or how to go ahead if you're interested in Buddhism on your particular path. But I do want to share some ways and some things that have helped me in understanding these basic teachings. But just keep in mind, you're in charge. No one here is above you. No one here is below you. We're all on the path together. In Zen, teachers sometimes talk about parroting what you think the teacher wants you to say as herding other people's cows. It's not authentic because you actually haven't lived the process of understanding what the teachings are. So the advice I'll give you is, as you develop your spiritual life, make sure that you're looking at yourself carefully. Make sure that you're not just herding your other people's cows. You want to herd your own cows. So to start with one question that may be in your heads, why are they the Four Noble Truths? You could say, well, yes, the man who became the historical Buddha left a small principality, Kapilavastu, where he was a kind of royalty, sometimes called a prince, Prince Siddhartha Gautama. But no, that's not the reason. The reason is that noble in this case is meant to tell us that this is reality as seen from the eyes of someone who's enlightened. So it is an ennobled view of reality, if you will. So I'm going to go ahead and read the Four Truths in one translation and then talk a little bit about translation issues. This particular version comes from the New York Buddhist Church. The first and most profound teaching of the Buddha is the Four Noble Truths. First, life is suffering, pain, frustration, agitation, jealousy. 2, the origin of suffering is ignorance, selfishness, craving. 3, the cessation of suffering, or perfect peace, can be achieved through the elimination of ignorance, selfishness, and craving. The path to extinguish ignorance, selfishness, and craving is the Eightfold Path, sometimes called the Eightfold Noble Path. And I can rattle off the dimensions of the Eightfold Noble Path, but that will be the topic for the final service in this series next Sunday. Right views, right thought, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation. All valuable things as abstractions that you could see fitting in with most of the world's great religions. But it's before we go into some translation issues, it's natural to take a look at that and say, gee, what a downer. You know, I mean, that's very negative, you know. Life is suffering, life is pain. Part of that is because we Americans really accentuate the positive. We don't want to dwell on things that are difficult or dark. And I know that some of you in the audience today probably have worked as marketers. So this is a marketer just given the assignment might go ahead and try and make a positive version of the Four Noble Truths, and it might go like this. Be happy now. That was life is suffering. You're suffering because of ignorance, greed, cravings. Live your best life. There is a way to go ahead and move beyond that condition. Leave your sufferings behind. Fourth, that solution is the Eightfold Noble Path. Buy our product. So there's an advertising version of the Four Noble Truths. But in truth, in spirituality, we live in this world of difficulty where it's impossible for us not to think in terms of dualism. Good, bad, positive, negative. That's not a knock on any of us. That's how we live, that's where we live. But what's confusing sometimes is spirituality is always going to a holistic point of view. When we chanted today the Metta Sutta, the loving kindness meditation, were you surprised that we almost ended with may my enemies be happy and well? May no harm or difficulty come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. That's the spiritual perspective. We don't make distinctions. From a spiritual point of view, all living things deserve to be happy and well. I wanted to go through the Four Noble Truths briefly in terms of the original Sanskrit or Pali. And this is most important for the first noble truth, which is often translated as life is pain, life is suffering. But the actual Sanskrit word is dukkha, D-U-K-K-H-A, is how it's spelled out. And sometimes our own ministers here and guest speakers will refer to dukkha because it is more than suffering. It's actually a turn of phrase, a figure of speech that means the wheel doesn't fit the axle, that life isn't satisfying. So maybe none of us go around in ox-driven carts with wooden wheels today, But maybe you've been in a car where there's a little bit of a bump that's systematic and it just drives you crazy. Dukkha includes that. It's not just suffering, pain. It can just be dis-ease, unease, some lingering sense of unsatisfaction. And a deep analysis of most people shows that regardless of their sunny disposition, there's something nagging at them. They're not quite satisfied. Or maybe they have very good reasons not to be satisfied. Maybe their life is very difficult in a way. Dukkha includes all of those things. The word that is used for the second noble truth is samudaya. I won't pretend that I knew this before I looked it up. We often focus on dukkha because it's helpful to understand what it really means. And before I leave dukkha, I should also mention that a great writer in our tradition, Ken Tanaka, in his book Ocean, identifies this truth of suffering as life is a bumpy road, which is much closer to the figure of speech that is symbolized by the term dukkha, where the wheel doesn't fit the axle. With sumadaya, the truth of the cause of dukkha, which is craving or grieving. The craving can be for pleasure, being or non-being. Nirodha is the Sanskrit word for the truth of the cessation of suffering through the cessation of craving. It is likely that the phoneme nir there is the same phoneme that's in nirvana, cessation. And magga, the truth of the path to the end of suffering. This path is also known as the Noble Eightfold Path, which the Buddha described as a means to enlightenment. So, a moment more on the first noble truth. In our lives, most of the time, we're not suffering. We don't think we're suffering. And I'm not suggesting that you're secretly, unknown to yourself, suffering, but you may not be completely satisfied. But we're so lucky. Most of us lead comfortable lives. I hope that all of you lead comfortable lives. But even those who live comfortable lives often are encouraged, or discouraged rather, when things don't go their way. They may take it personally. They may see it as a blow. Or they may just have some craving that they can't quite identify or solve. Or maybe it's very specific. Many of you have bought a nice car, sometimes even a new car, and then seen its first ding, its first dent, its first scratch. Or maybe if you're young enough, you're a gamer, you've just bought the best gaming system, and 2 weeks later they upgrade. They bring out a whole new gaming system that's even better. That's life for us. It's difficult as living beings in this world of samsara or suffering not to be dissatisfied from time to time. The second noble truth sometimes when you read translations of the Four Noble Truths, they'll say that the cause of that are attachments. And that's not necessarily untrue, but it gives the wrong connotation in some ways. Because to become a Buddha is not to become detached from your feelings or detached from the world. You can talk about non-attachment. It means that you recognize the attachment and allow it to be present, but not to guide your actions. In other words, hidden in the second noble truth is the need for all of us to be self-reflective, to think about who we are truly, our lives. What are the things that we have done that were unexpected? Almost all of us have found ourselves angry once in a while for no cause, or maybe have said something we didn't mean to say. This is because at some deep level within ourselves we're not quite satisfied. So the second noble truth speaks to that process. One very concrete way to understand is to turn to another of the basic teachings. Some of you know of a concept called the three poisons in Buddhism: anger, greed, and ignorance. In our tradition, someone changed that to greed, anger, and stupidity so that the acronym could be GAS. So I've got GAS. But the traditional terms are anger, greed, and ignorance. And if you consider the fact that the second noble truth is focusing on the things we might do that are difficult, then indeed those concepts help us. We all get angry. We all crave something we don't have. We all act stupidly because we don't quite understand things. But if we reflect on our lives, we can begin to see ourselves more clearly and maybe even decide how to deal with those issues in a way that's more satisfactory. The third noble truth. So Buddhism is not quite a religion in the same way that the other great religions are, which are dependent primarily on faith and belief. I find myself sometimes telling folks that Buddhism is 1/3 religion in that sense. There is faith, there is belief required, but it's also 1/3 philosophy, and then 1/3 ethics or way of living. How do you live a good life? How can you be a good person? And all three of those are very important, but they pre-existed Western religions. So it's not always the best way to understand either a Western religion or Buddhism to compare the two. But it is interesting. And the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering, does require faith and belief to a certain point. That is, it's a promise that there is a way. And it doesn't help, I guess, that you're being asked to develop that path with a lot of advice from the basic Buddhist teachings, but it's really up to you. So we are asked to consider, if not believe anyway, that our lives can become better, that we can leave suffering behind. And then the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Noble Path. And although I'll be talking about that next Sunday, just know for now, it's not a step program. That is, you don't do one step and then the next step and then the next step, as in some recovery programs. These are all dimensions of spirituality that can help us if we focus on them at different times, at appropriate times, and maybe even work on where we realize that we need the work to live our lives more faithfully, or to do no harm as we go through this world, and to actually live up to the aspiration that no harm or difficulty come to all sentient beings, that all sentient beings may live in peace and harmony. So we've gone through some of the Four Noble Truths, and I hope that you'll find something there that you can use. I hope that your understanding of them has increased slightly. You know, it takes time to consider the Dharma. That's one reason why, in our tradition anyway, we emphasize deep hearing. We try and come to Dharma talks when we can. We continue to come to hear sometimes the same thing because our understanding changes over time. but it's up to you. So what I hope you can do is to consider some of the things that were said today and think about them later on. Apply them to your own lives. See where they may have traction. If they don't have traction, that's okay. But if they do, then begin to develop your consciousness, your appreciation, your spirituality, so that you can see your own shortcomings. Always the hardest thing to do. Other people can tell you, or at least tell somebody else what your problems are. You may not be able to tell other people what your problems are. We are a little bit blind to our shortcomings. But on the Buddhist path, that's part of our job, is to look at our behavior, determine what's behind that behavior, how we can improve our side of interaction with other people to diminish those negative things that might happen as a result. And that way we're hurting our own cows. We're paying attention, we're being responsible. So even though we can't escape the concepts of positive and negative because of our dualistic thinking, almost impossible to escape in this world of difficulty, we can use those concepts to help us. And although it may sound at first like the Four Noble Truths are negative, I hope that today you'll see that they're really quite positive. That from a dualistic point of view, the good news is in the third and fourth truths. The good news is that there is a way to ease our suffering, or at least our discomfort, our nagging insecurities. And that way is a spiritual life, identified by the historical Buddha as the Eightfold Noble Path. So with that summation, could I please ask you all to put your hands together in Gasho? Amida, who attained Buddhahood in the infinite past, full of compassion for foolish beings of the five defilements, took the form of Shakyamuni Buddha and appeared in Gaia. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandabs, 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 namandabs. So thanks everyone. I really appreciate your attention for all that. I hope you got something out of it. At this time, we are going to go ahead and do another chant. Because we're dealing with early Buddhism, the Metta Sutta was the English translation of something from the days of early Buddhism. We're also going to do the Vandana T Sarana. And in this case, I think I will ask you to stand, and please turn to your Gatha books to page 96. And we're all going to chant together. This also has a tune, so just try and follow along. And before we're done, we'll be chanting in Pali, Japanese, and English. So we start with the Vandana, the homage. I know it says leader and Sangha, but everyone chants this together, please. And pronunciation is pretty easy. There's no tricks with the pronunciation. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened one. And now for the Tisarana. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Kie Butsu. Namo Kie Ho. Namo Kie So. Hands together in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Dabs. Namo Dabs. Namo Dabs. And please be seated. Thank you so much. Just 1 second. So if you attended last Sunday, we did not have a musician to support us, and I'm so grateful today we have Trishia Carinio. She's going to go ahead and help us. We have music meditation sometimes that's somewhat similar to the other meditations we do, but this time you get some relaxing music to listen to. So please go ahead and let's do this. Let's put your hands together in Gasho and bow your heads and enjoy the peace and calm of this music meditation. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Butsu. Namo Dabs. Namo Dabs. Namo Dabs. So thank you, everyone. We're just about through, and I really appreciate your kind attention. Thank you also to Trishia for the lovely music. So the early teachings of the Buddha inform all the schools and sects. They form the foundation of what today is a wide variety of approaches to the Buddhist teachings. I just wanted to mention that the reason for that is on his deathbed, the historical Buddha said a couple of really interesting things. One, don't worship me. I'm not a god. I'm a human being. When I die, I'm going to be no longer on this world. He also said, I've taught you everything I know. There are no secret teachings. So please study the teachings and then work out your own way as best you can. So earlier you may have wondered why I encouraged you to make your own decisions about your future. Those were the instructions of the Buddha, at the very end of a long and enlightened life. Some of you know that the Buddha lived to be 80 years old, 45 years of that spent in sharing what he had discovered. And the last thing he encouraged us to do was to work out our own way as best we can. So what is wonderful for us is this means the teachings for everybody. It means that we are all on the same path. And we have some wonderful reverends on our staff. We have some wonderful Dharma teachers on our staff. And we're all on the same horizontal plane. That is, we continue on the Dharma path, on the Nembutsu path in our tradition. And this may seem a little funny, but that's the Buddha's understanding. And if I could take one more incident from the life of the Buddha, some people think that after he became enlightened, he had it made in the shade. He could just be blissful all the time. He dealt with all kinds of upset, difficulties, personal. He had family members who were at odds with him, even an attempted murder. So there was drama and melodrama involved in the life of the Buddha. He did not want, and he did not suggest, that once you increased your awareness or even became enlightened, that problems stopped. What he did want us to do was to use those problems as a way to transform the difficulties in our life into wisdom and compassion. And that's what he was able to do for 45 years. So that's why, and in the process, of course, started one of the world's great religions. So that's why I wanted to spend several sessions this August in celebrating the teachings of the historical Buddha. So again, welcome everyone. In a moment, we're going to go ahead and close, and then there will be refreshments downstairs. I will be joined by two of my colleagues up here to answer any questions you might have. And then later we'll be downstairs too, so plenty of time to get your questions answered. There are handouts in the back foyer about this series, and there's a handout that also talks about the Wednesday night sessions. We have 2 more Wednesday nights focusing on certain concepts in basic Buddhism. Long term, those Wednesday night sessions will turn in September to the 3 refuge ceremony, the taking of the 3 refuges in a formal ceremony, and the last Saturday in September, there'll be such a ceremony in the late afternoon. There'll soon be handouts on that as well. So if you are at a point in your life where you want to more formally accept Buddhism, this is the most basic way to do it. And in truth, it's the way in which we are encouraged in this tradition to become Buddhist. When I got married to my wife Joyce, I wasn't formally a Buddhist. And the minister said, "Oh, don't worry, just go ahead and take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha." And that's what I did. And that's what got me started. No problem. The marriage is still working too, so that's all good. And now, do we have any other announcements people would like to make? We wanted to thank, I'll mention Nancy Martinez by name. We had a food drive with drive-by drop-offs on Saturday, all going to the Food Bank of San Diego, so that was successful. Thank you, Nancy, for that. We try and do community things. My colleague Arturo Rubio is here. He heads the Dana Committee, who will often formalize things that we can do to help the community, so we have various drives for that. And that helps us to a small degree live up to the promise of helping all others. So at this time, we invite you to offer incense, and I'm going to go ahead. For those who are new, if you want to follow the ritual that we do, you go ahead and approach the shrine. Imagine that the shrine is here, about 3 or 4 feet in front, 15-degree bow. Step forward with your left foot. If there are a few more steps, that's fine. But once in front of the shrine, then take a pinch of incense, place it in the middle of the burner where the coal is burning, and then with hands together in Gasho, bow 45 degrees. If you wish, you can say Namo Amida Butsu at that time. And then hands at your side, a slight bow. That's a 15-degree bow. And then step back with your right foot. Now, if you don't get any of that right, it's okay. But you're still welcome to offer incense. And thank you very much for attending today. Take care.